This is our second video for chapter 1, lesson 5. This is the video where we're going to see how to graph proportional relationships. This is where it's going to tie in our last lesson with the graphing, and it's going to tie that into our proportional stuff that we've been doing in chapter 1. So we're going to continue with our notes on page 6, and we're going to start with two vocab words. Our first vocab word is the word linear. And linear is actually a word. It describes points that graph to form a straight line. If you look at the word linear, you can even see the word line in the beginning of it. So linear, straight line, make that connection in your head. Our next vocab word is the word proportional graph. This is what our whole lesson is about today. We talked about proportional relationships in lesson 1.4. A proportional graph is just a way to graph a relationship to see if it's proportional. So if we graph a relationship and it has these two qualities, then we can say that it is a proportional relationship or a proportional graph. So it has to be linear, which remember means it has to be a straight line, and it also has to pass through the origin. Remember, the origin is where our two axes intersect. So I want you to find these two first quadrant graphs in your notes on page 6. We're going to draw an example of a proportional graph and a non-proportional graph. Both of these are just first quadrant only because all of our problems will be real life problems, which means that we won't deal too much with negatives in this lesson. So for our proportional example, I'm going to use my line tool here. That'll make me the straightest line possible. A proportional graph, remember, it has to pass through the origin and it has to be a beautiful straight line. So if we graph a relationship and we get a picture like this, then we can say that relationship is proportional. Please fill that in on your notes in page 6. Now a non-proportional graph. Non-proportional graphs, they could be lacking either this part or both. So the first example I'm going to show you is an example of a linear relationship, but it doesn't pass through the origin. So that would be an example of a non-proportional graph. I'm also going to show you an example of a graph that does pass through the origin, but is not linear. So if you take a look at my line there, aside from it being very poorly drawn, we can see that it has a bend here. It's not a straight line. So it does pass through the origin, so that passes this piece, but it does not, it passes through the origin, that passes this piece, but it is not linear, so that makes it non-proportional. So make sure those two examples are drawn into your notes. That will help us to do our practice problems. And then we're going to take a look at practice problem number 1 at the bottom of page 6. Number 1 says, James earns $5 an hour babysitting. Is the amount of money he earns proportional to the number of hours he works? So we are going to use this table, and we are going to determine the relationship between his hours and the money he earns, and then we're going to graph it. So let's start with, if James works for 0 hours, he's going to earn $0. If he works for 1 hour, he will earn $5. If he works for 2 hours, he will earn 2 times 5, that's $10. If he works for 3 hours, 3 times 5, he will make $15. And if he works for 4 hours, he will earn 4 times 5, that's $20. So there's our table, and we're going to graph this. X numbers come first, that's our x-axis here, those are our walking numbers. Y numbers are here, so those are our jump numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to space this out a little bit. I'm going to put a 1 here, 2 here, 3, 4, and 5. I think you should probably set yours up the same way as mine. And then I'm going to space this out a little bit too. I'm going to count by 5s here. That's 5, 10, 15, and 20, and that will be our money. Okay, so that's our money and our hours. So if we go to graph this relationship, we'll start with our first point, that's 0, 0. If James works for 0 hours, he will earn $0. That's what that point represents right there. Next, if James works for 1 hour, he will earn $5. 2 hours, he will earn $10. 3 hours, he will earn $15. 4 hours, he will earn $20. What do you notice about our points? First of all, I'm noticing that they are linear. They form a straight line. Here it is. The second thing I notice is that our line passes through the origin. There we go. So we can say that this is in fact a proportional relationship. So make sure you draw your line there. Make sure we see that it passes through the origin. And then we are going to fill out our explanation here. And I'm going to type it so it's a little bit faster and a little bit neater. Our explanation will say the money James earns is proportional to the hours he works. And then we'll give a little bit of a reason why. The graph is linear and passes through the origin. So that's what your explanation should look like with these problems. Tell me about the graph. Tell me that the money is proportional to the hours that he works. And now we are finished. I'm just going to take you to page 7 for a quick second to look at number 2. Number 2 has a little bit of a typo in it. Number 2 should say Maddie recorded her heart rate after every minute of exercising. She recorded the date. Oh my goodness, this should say data. It's a second typo. In the chart below, is her heart rate proportional to the number of minutes she exercises? So this says after 0 minutes of exercising, her heart beat 65 times. After 1 minute of exercising, now her heart is beating 95 times. After 2 minutes of exercising, she's up to 150. 3 minutes, 200, and 4 minutes, 250. So her heart is really racing here. We're trying to figure out if her heart rate is proportional to the number of minutes that she has exercised. So just make sure that you have your numbers in correctly and you can understand what that's supposed to look like. Go ahead and graph that. You will have to choose how you're breaking down your x-axis and your y-axis, and then give us an explanation. Okay, your to-do list for today. I would like you to update your flashcards with our new vocab from both 1.5 videos. That's quadrants, x-axis, y-axis, coordinates, linear, and proportional graphs. So we're up to quite a bit of vocab words for this lesson, or this chapter so far. Then you're going to finish the practice problems in your 1.5 notes. I think that's just question 2 and question 3. And when you're finished, you can start 1.6.